and we are live.
Oh,
Yes.
sweat.
Hello,
Oh my God.
hello everyone. My name is Diamond Rivera, and you are here with live discussions with Diamond. And today, I really have a very special guest for you all, the one and only Timothy Lanier-Circelli. Thank you so much again, Timothy, for coming.
Dude, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I'm so glad we're doing this and I'm just excited to be here and I'm glad. I'm happy.
Absolutely. And, we definitely have much to talk about. And especially now with COVID happening and quarantining, having these type of discussions that I have with you and others is very necessary
Absolutely.
because it kind of gets us in a zone. It allows us to kind of think of our thoughts. It allows us to just sometimes take that big, deep breath and just exhale.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, me and you go, I think, way back for many people that know. And at least before we get started, people will see they have the live comments here already. Venus, your sister is here. We've got
Dude.
Lily from Young Ambition
What
here.
up? What up?
We've got Brandon
Oh,
here.
sweat.
Yes, and we also have Alejandro here already. But yes, we'll just go through the comments. But at least, like I said before, we've had so much history. I think we've met, I think maybe close to 2002, 2003, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Maybe even before that, maybe like 2001, but maybe
Yeah, yes.
2002.
I,
So because I remember we have a picture of my in my house in the
mhm.
Bronx, and we went to Florida that year, and
Yeah,
it's I have a big 2000. It's just like the big lettering of Disney in 2001. So I always like recall that
yeah,
time.
absolutely. And I mean, we both went to Starlight Dance Studio of the Bronx,
Yes, we did.
created by the late David Melendez. And, within this discussion, for me, it's definitely therapeutic. It's
Yes,
definitely something needed because a lot of us in that time, we haven't seen each other in so long. So this is
absolutely.
great to just kind of reunite. And for me, my first question is, who was Timothy before Starlight or before dancing? And what led you into your love for dance?
So I really started off trying to do basically all the typical things. I was doing baseball and football and karate and all this. And to be honest, besides karate, I wasn't very good at. I wasn't very good at sports, so it took me a moment, and then there was a moment where I saw my sister actually performing, and I believe this was at Kids Bay at the time. And I was like, "Mom, Dad, like I want to do that. Like I don't know what this is. I don't know what she's doing, but that is what I want to do." And then somehow we ended up. I know that my family had like a previous history with Starlight, and somehow we ended up back at Starlight. And I was like 6. I was such a baby, and then that's where things kind of kicked off. So at 6, like joined Starlight, and my love for dance. I mean, it was pretty. It like stuck to me like glue. I would
Mhm.
say. I remember they would. I had Shauna. I think maybe my first year.
Wait, Shauna was
Shauna,
your first teacher?
I think so. If
Yeah,
I'm
she
if
was
I'm not
mine as
mistaken.
well. Yeah.
And I remember every Saturday I would run into the studio and slide into the studio, and I would have all the dust from the floor on my pants, and they would all, but I was just so excited, like
Mhm.
I wanted to shimmy, 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 and I was just so excited to be there. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I mean, seeing from your first teacher was Shauna, who was mine, you kind of saw that like you had to go through the set of teachers to kind of
Yeah,
evolve.
yeah, absolutely.
And for me, I wanted to ask, when you started in Starlight, was it more of the kids you were with were around your same age, or you were kind of introduced to kids of all ages?
When I first started, it was really just kids my age because I didn't know anything about salsa, so I had to start with the basics,
Hmm.
literally the basic, all that, the Suzy Q's, all that, and then um, I would say like 2 years in, once I reached like 8 years old, is when things kind of like kicked off. Before that, it was just more kids my age, more people,
Hmm.
kids learning the same thing I'm learning, at the same pace. Again, going through that teacher status. You start with this teacher and you go to, and because it was
Yeah,
like a big deal. If you were working
yeah,
with a certain teacher, it was like, oh, I made it. Like
yeah, absolutely.
it was very much that. So for me, it was cool. I then fast forward to the Puerto Rican Day Parade.
Mm.
It was my first Puerto Rican Day Parade, and I think you and Bud were kind of talking about this with the
The red
red,
ruffles.
the red
Yes,
ruffles. And I
yes, yes.
remember because I had on the red ruffles, I had like it was a leotard, and I had
Yes.
and I had the shorts, and I think it was like we had to wear black sneakers or something like
Yep.
that. It's very
Black.
specific. And that was, I remember we were in the back. I was in the back doing my things because the kids at that time, again, the older kids are in the front, the kids are in the
Hmm.
back, following along, doing the best you
Hmm.
can. I mean, that was one of the best experiences. And then I remember in that moment is when I think David not saw me for the first time, but it was the moment where he was like, "Who is that kid?"
Yeah.
And again, I was just like Ace. I didn't know. I was just like, let's go. Like,
Yeah.
I was just again so excited just to be dancing. Dancing for me
Mhm.
was like it felt like the best thing I could be doing, honestly. And then when I reached A's, when after that the Puerto Rican Day Parade, they started Junior Heartbreak Boys,
Mhm.
and that's when I started to work with older kids and um, basically branch out into a whole nother spectrum of salsa in the community that really at that age I didn't even know existed because I was just
Mhm.
in the studio thinking this is what exists
Yeah.
of salsa, and then really things just skyrocketed into a whole nother galaxy of meeting people and working with people older than me, working with those teachers that you were like,
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Working with professionals, people that were coming in to choreograph. Like I think again, you and Bud were kind of talking about. It started to lead to those things, and that was, I mean, again, one of the most exciting times because everything was nonstop. It was Starlight, 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 all day, every day. You know, day into night.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I mean, there were times you were there. I think I told Bud, and you were even there. Like you're there almost at maybe 9, 10 in the morning to maybe 6, 7 at night, if that. Sometimes because you're doing classes. You either have a class and then you have a gap and you have another class and then
Right,
you're
right. and
assisting.
and, and even before that, I remember, company class and these performing groups, because I even before I was in any of the performing groups, I would go on these trips.
Hmm.
I would watch the Pee-wees, and I would, these again, the girls are my age, but they were like so advanced, and I was like,
Yeah.
what is this?
Yeah.
Like watching company class do, things like Love for Sale.
Hmm.
um I remember that watching Edwin. There were so many moments where I was like, wow, that's where I want to be. And starting with the juniors, that's where that kind of started off for me.
Absolutely, because I know we had originally was the Heartbreak Boys, and then when the younger kids like ourselves saw, oh wow, we don't have to really wait till we become like teenagers.
To
There's a
kind of,
group.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's a
there's
group
a group
created.
for us.
Absolutely. I mean, I still remember it was you, Matthew, Manny, Anthony. Oh man, maybe I know I'm probably
Well,
missing.
if you want to start with the original,
Yes,
I
yes,
think
yes,
6 or 7. It was me, Matthew Vidal, Craig,
yes.
Michael, Christian. If I'm missing someone, I'm so bad. I'm so sorry. Um, well, that's off the top of
Yeah.
my dome. It's been a long time, but that was like how could I forget? And Jason.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, and
Um,
no, and
but
I
yes, that was
believe.
the original 6 that really like kicked off, we did so many things. I said Jason, don't scream at me.
Oh my God! Everybody else is seeing it. That's Sister Venus. This is his sister who will keep him in check when he's
That's my
and
bad. That's my bad.
no, but you know what, Timothy? When you say those names, it brings back so much memories, and these are memories that a lot of us who were in that school at that time, now, I mean, before probably took for granted and just thought we were just, we were gonna dance with each other, wanted to do routines, but then like years later, it's like, oh my God, like
Right. In
I
hindsight.
really, there was an impact, and with the Junior Heartbreak Boys, for me, second Brandon says second generation was fired
I
too.
know, I know. I'm just telling the story from the beginning, y'all.
Yes, man. I mean, for me, and I'm not gonna lie, I was actually the late bloomer coming into juniors because I remember my one of my favorite routines ever, besides the Skittles routine.
The
Yes,
famous.
yes. Besides that routine, it really when you guys did the Junior Heartbreak Boys and Heartbreak Boys battle at the New York Congress, I believe it was 2005, maybe or four.
Probably. I think I definitely have that on DVD, and I think I've watched it a plethora of times over the years.
Yeah, because what I loved was that you had actually the second generation Heartbreak Boys
Yep, yep.
battling the second generation Junior Boys, who also included TJ, Brandon. So as you
Yes.
saw, like with Junior Heartbreak Boys, a lot of kids moved up into the Heartbreak Boys, or
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
moved on from dance completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, when I saw that routine, that was something that, oh my God,
The
Willie says,
you
those.
know what, you're bringing up those, and I like you even bringing up that routine, like brings me to like those rehearsals and those like times of just like trying to figure out what we're doing and how we're doing it, and I
Yeah.
mean, but wow,
No,
like
no. I mean, the memories, because like, normal kid, like you got about 5 to 6 or 7 young adolescent kids, and we had the opportunity to be taught by Edwin Rivera,
yes, yes,
who was an original Heartbreak Boy and was that like inspiration for us because he moved on to California with Albert
yeah,
Torres, and
absolutely.
for him to come down and to realize that he actually taught the juniors and the Heartbreak Boys. So that's almost like a 5 to 8 year process.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
he always, that's the one of the things that I always loved about him. He always came back, and he always, I mean, he would come with the ideas out of, and he would have the music, and it was always something forward thinking, something we have never heard. I remember
mhm.
most of us didn't even know who the Neptunes were, and he
Yeah,
was so in tuned into Pharrell and Bape and all these different things, and like we're like, I mean, again, he always came with, you know, the sounds and ready to explode,
hmm,
and teach,
yeah,
and really like try to pull the best out of
mhm,
everyone so that this could be the best possible thing for all. And it really was like an era of just, there was a lot of dancing, a lot of memories, especially, while David was alive, especially in your congresses, the times we spent taking the floor up,
yeah,
after all the dancing was over, and we sat and we were the kids in our pajamas and stuff, helping take the floors up and talking and laughing and running through the hotel, causing all types of havoc.
oh my
I
God.
mean, it's,
You
but
talk about the
but
Hilton.
but really, I mean, we were having some kind of, it was its own thing. Again, our eyes were open, even going to the New York Congresses and seeing how many people were there from different places.
Yes.
I mean, being exposed to so much and so many different cultures within the salsa scene itself, and really, I mean, I don't know, it was, yeah. I'm like,
No, I know. It just sometimes giving you those memories, it's like, wow, it just puts you in a different state. And what I love is Willie on her next comment says the Michael Jackson routine, the infamous and the
the
costume.
costume. I mean, that is, I've said it before. That's one of my favorite moments. I think, as a junior harp as a junior Hartford boy, and
Mhm.
as I mean, working with Edwin. I mean, the costumes to this, I never wanted to let that costume go, even after I grew out of it. Like that's how
Mhm. Yeah.
nostalgic it was, in the wigs and Edwin putting that routine together. I mean, we could talk we could talk
Oh,
about that.
we could also talk about what Chris says is Diamond's see-through costume because I had the pink one, so I look like a big old Kirby. But I mean, it's memories like that, like us performing in those routines and like in the I remember the Castle Hill. I believe it was Castle Hill, that location with the two or three story floor.
Yes, the 3-story floor, and we were rehearsing, I think, on the second floor. When maybe we probably rehearsed in different spaces, but I specifically have a memory of us performing. I mean, us working on that routine in this on the second floor of that studio, and I don't know. You can. What do you think about? I want to hear your.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for me, like I'm kind of like an elephant out of the paint because for me, even though I was a part of the group and I came a lot later, I really wanted to soak everything in
Absolutely.
because for me, going from class to class, like a lot of people who was in that school with me knew, I was very just rambunctious, just very. I wanted to do everything,
Absolutely.
but I still needed to find a sense of belonging.
Right.
And for me, it was okay. Now I'm a part of the Junior Heartbreak Boys, meaning I'm a part of a collective of kids my age.
Right.
And now we're kind of stuck together, and we have to learn how to communicate with each other. We have to know each
Absolutely.
other's tendencies. We learn each other's tendencies. We learn what makes us tick, what makes us
Yes. Yes.
angry, what
Yes.
makes us happy. And for me, I think what I loved about those days, especially in the junior boys, was especially with the Michael Jackson routine that Edwin would make us practice like we were Jackson 5 or like New Edition
I mean,
and just rehearse.
if he didn't believe it, you know,
Yes.
like if he didn't believe, he was like, no, 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 no. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. He would make us do it over and over and
if we
over.
didn't look cohesive, if the mics weren't in the same place, if they weren't spaced apart, I mean, everything, like
Yeah.
we had to technically be young professionals, especially with Edwin,
Hmm.
because he was at a whole other level, and we were trying to work at that pace, and we did. I mean, we were
Yeah.
working. Remember when Edwin would come, we had a limited amount of time. we had a little, we had a little bit of time, you know, with him, and it was like we got to do this routine. We got this time to do it,
Yeah.
and everybody needs to pull up. And it was very much like everybody get like,
Yes.
even if we were 12, 13, whatever age
Yeah.
we were, that's how he was teaching us to coexist, and how to be the best dancers we could be, and be able to pick up choreography, and to be able to look the same, and to be able to learn a whole song
Yes. I think
without actually ever looking at the lyrics to the
that
song.
is true because even with
Lucky
the
I'm crazy, I would Google
yeah.
and stuff back in that time. I didn't really have a phone, but maybe I did have a phone. But it wasn't like now where you just pull up the lyrics on Apple Music and you have it there. It was like keep listening to the song, learn the lyrics, and
Yes.
that's how it is. It
Absolutely.
was very much that.
Yeah, I mean, with that routine, it was so pivotal because we were brought up as professionals when we were young, but instilling in us to be committed and to
Absolutely.
really take the role of that routine of what he wanted us individually to do because,
Mhm.
we had different dancers, but we all played a certain role. And
Right.
we realized that the routine would not look the same when one, like myself, was possibly doing something totally different. And as most people used to call me, styling diamond because I was
Edwin's
on my
favorite. That's Edwin's
yeah.
favorite.
And the one thing I loved with Edwin was that his ability to literally take the best out of us in a 4 hour span. And what I mean is
Woo!
those times, I remember he would come from LA and say,
He's
y'all need
like,
to be
it's
here
Saturday night. No, it's like a random night during the week. And he's like, okay, we got 4 hours. And we're gonna do this from beginning to end. And you either get with it, get with it, or you get with it. Like
Yeah,
there was no other choice. And that's what we did. I mean, and it was so normal. Like for us, it
yeah,
was like, okay, yeah, yeah. That's what we do.
yeah. You were like 13, 14, and he's like, all right, I'm coming from LA. I'm coming on that Friday. You come in that Saturday, and on Sunday we clean it up, and that's it. And it was like,
Boop, boop,
it
done.
was after a while, it was like, okay, cool. This is how we work. But at 13, 14, and then besides just like performing locally, you got to experience like yourself. You were able to experience places like Japan and other
Yes,
places.
yes. I mean, Japan was, I think, a huge, looking back on it, was a huge moment, I think, for the studio, for David, for us. I think the Heartbreak Boys had already been there. So that was like, wow, like couldn't believe it. And then to have that opportunity. And it wasn't like we went and just performed at a Congress. I mean, we were involved. I mean, we went and we had a tour guide. I mean, people treated us with so much respect, and I'm a kid at this time. So I was like, wow, wow. My mom was actually pregnant with Jordan at the time. So I was there with my dad. That's how long ago, my sister just graduated from high school. So puts
Congrats.
things in, puts things in time perspective.
Yeah.
And it was, and I mean, again, we performed I think at least 3 times. We performed our number. We performed in some other club that we probably weren't allowed to be in, but they wanted us there. And then we actually did. We recreated I think the first battle number with the a company from Japan. So we also did that. Again, and there were so many things that, again, it wasn't like we just went from that Congress left. It was a whole experience. And I remember coming back home to the Bronx and telling all my friends, like, oh my God, I went to Japan. Like it was pretty insane. And those are the moments that like I'm forever grateful for, because those little moments that were made possible by people like my parents and people like David, you know, really opened my eyes. Like, wow, like there's this community is huge. Number one, two,
Mhm.
like again, I was a kid having this crazy experience and traveling the world, traveling to all types of places, not just Japan, but all over the country, and never think anything of it. You're like, yes, we're
Yeah.
going to put, going to Texas, and then also creating a whole nother community of people our age in Texas, because I remember that
Mhm.
was such a huge
Oh
thing
my
for us.
God. Yes. Yes.
We were meeting kids our age who were so good. They were fantastic,
Mhm.
and all that, and it really was a touching. Again, the opportunities we were afforded so young. I mean, David really let me he let me be free, in a sense of like, he was like, kid, do whatever, do whatever your heart wants to do. Even when I was like, I don't know if I want to do something else, or if I want to do this, and he was just like, he was always with me, and always pushing me to be my best self, as well as Edwin and as well as Willie.
Yes, Willie, Willie. Oh man, I miss Willie. And for me, I like I said before, I'm like an elephant. I take a lot of knowledge, and I wasn't even with you in Japan, but I know who you danced with, and it was Salsa Sunrise.
So I didn't want to say the wrong name, but it was Salsa Sunrise, and we create, and I remember, because I believe what we did was we sent videotapes
Yeah.
of the performance, I think, to them, and then they learned it on their own. We went there again at kids, and we rehearsed with them probably once, and then we performed it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how. I mean, like, what? I don't know. Like, again, and we don't even speak the same language. So this is stuff that people really need to understand. Like, we're kids working with people that don't speak our language, but the heart of salsa, the heart of community, was already there, and that's something that David was trying to instill to other people and other kids and other worlds.
I definitely agree. Like Brandon says, definitely set us up for life as an adult in the entertainment business. Because again, when people have to realize we were kids in an adult world,
Absolutely.
like you said, we were going to shows that literally we had to go in and we had to go out,
Yeah.
and it was like you had
Yeah, I
schools and
mean, most of the shows I did when we were kids, I wasn't even, I mean, how many clubs, how many, I mean, I wasn't supposed to be in, I mean, not that nothing bad was happening, but again, like to us, it was normal. Like, no, I'm supposed to be here. Like,
yeah,
I'm performing. Like, but we were in spaces that were so much older than we were,
hmm
and having and being at socials. And David always had this thing, like, if you have to ask, like,
yes,
you
you
have
have
to
to
ask
actually
people to
understand.
dance. There's no standing around, there's no doing any of that, and messing around. Like, you better be dancing. And again, we had to ask older ladies, no matter the age,
hmm
ethnicity, no matter who they were, where they're from, we had to ask them. And that was, again, that's what we knew. Like, that's how we ended up meeting people and being so connected with people, because inadvertently we yeah, performances literally at
Midnight.
midnight
Yes.
was lit.
Like we would be at rehearsal. All right, let's go. We got a performance, get the stuff, and let's go. And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and to even go, I'm gonna go back to the beginning. When okay, you have the junior Heartbreak Boys, but before there was a rule that you can be in multiple.
yes, you couldn't be in like
You can
two different.
you couldn't be in
Yeah,
all. You couldn't be in Sweethearts, Fuerza Gigante, and another group and another group. But at a one moment before that was the thing, I was also like, I was in Junior Heartbreak Boys, I was in Fuerza Gigante, and I was doing Heart and Soul.
yeah,
So though that alone, I mean, that was like a workload without me even knowing. That was a workload, because I was so involved. And again, I was having a separate experience with each of these groups, because I
hmm
was doing performances with Fuerza, and that was its own experience. And then doing performances with Junior Heartbreak Boys, and that's its own thing. And then
yeah.
Heart and Soul was completely its own avenue of, again, meeting people and having experiences and traveling. And that was all happening simultaneously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with David, I really understood his vision because he had so many dancers, but a person like yourself that really honed in and at a younger age was very receptive to instruction,
Yeah.
that was eager to learn, that was electric on the dance floor at a younger age. That right there, I believe, inspired him. So putting you in different routines with people who are also older than you to
Yeah.
challenge you, that
Yeah,
was awesome.
absolutely.
I remember
Absolutely.
too that, like you said, Heart and Soul. That was something that I believe David created with you and Danielle Figueroa.
Say that one more time. Sorry, the comment threw me off.
um, no, Heart and Soul. Yeah, because Brandon puts Heart and Soul, that Kango hat. I remember that
Yes,
routine
yes,
because
yes,
that was
yes.
with you and Danielle, and that was awesome because in our dance world, there are always couples, but you didn't really see a
There
young
wasn't there
couple.
wasn't at that time, there wasn't really young couples our age, really, like, literally performing on an adult level,
hmm
if you will, performing it again. We're this little skinny Puerto Rican Cuban girl, and I'm this chubby little guy with all this charisma, and we're at nightclubs, me and my Kango hat, me going to different congresses. I mean, again, meeting people and doing stuff as if we were like some kind of pro team.
hmm
Again, it was very heightened. It was a very heightened experience because all that was happening. And yeah, it was really, really, I mean, amazing, really amazing.
And then from the junior boys, I think how it goes, because from my memory, we did juniors and then we did Fuerza. I believe it was sometimes that directionality because
Something like that.
because I
Well,
remember we.
the
Mhm.
first routine I did was the first routine I did with Fuerza Gigante was literally to the song Fuerza Gigante, was the red number. And again, this is this is where people, I think Fuerza was still made up of Fuerza was still made up of different groups. So
Yeah,
Fuerza included Heartbreak Boys, it included Sweethearts, it included Heart and Soul, it included Junior Heartbreak Boys. It included actually all of us to make up one big group. And then I think then they realized that was probably a little much. So
yeah,
so then they started to, and also I think also to give other kids opportunities. It wasn't fair that I think all we were basically filling up a lot of the, when there were, at this time the studio was so big, I think
yeah,
at one point that there was opportunity, there could be opportunities for other people, you know. And so then they started to separate things, and then I think then I, you know, then I was just Junior Heartbreak Boys and just a Heart and Soul instead
yeah,
of, and I was still kind of breaking the rules by being part of Heart and Soul because again there was like that's its own thing, it's its own separate, like it
yeah,
exists out, it almost existed outside of Starlight and in its own realm of how people looked at it. I think, which is interesting, you know.
yeah, absolutely. Because what, like you said, it was its own separate thing, its separate entity, and I think that was needed because what you guys at that point at your ages created was inspiration for the rest of us, even though we may have been older, I may have been younger, because you and Danielle were the youngest people in your groups.
Yeah,
So it was giving a lot of us who
they're like
wanted to be in these groups. Yeah, we wanted the aspiration. A lot of us might have never told you guys because we were your age. We didn't know how to.
and to be fair, I mean, at that time, I probably wouldn't have understood
Mhm.
the magnitude of what we were doing because in my own way, you know, I was a kid, so you know, I when we met, we didn't exactly have, we
Yeah,
weren't, you know, we were having two separate experiences, even in
yeah,
all the love and even through all the greatness, we were having two separate experiences, and we were, I mean, we were on the same group, but we weren't as probably as connected
yeah.
as we wanted to be. um yeah, it's just it's crazy. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, no, no worries.
So many things, so many things, but um yeah, I just think, you know, it was crazy now looking back because I felt very much like a little star, if you will. And you know, years later now, I'm obviously, that's obviously years and years ago and light years ago, but because I was in this heavy bar of Starlight and
Mhm.
and kind of moving at my own pace, really, and kind of making making new rules, if you will, and kind of being the star of this, it kind of also led me to um, have a certain ego and cockiness and, you know, way of being that maybe I wouldn't have been perceptive to being as connected, or even hearing, or even
Yeah,
again understanding that wow, this is really its own life form of, as far as like what this is going to do in the future for other kids who are watching and other kids that are seeing us perform at these levels. Again, when we started out, there weren't a lot of studios. It was like Kids Bay is where you learn salsa, and then there was, you know, there were little adult. You know, David had his schools, but then for around my age, there was only Starlight,
yeah,
and you know, and I mean, there was Young Ambition. There was still other,
yeah.
but
There was
in my
definitely,
I would say in my neighborhood,
yeah,
Starlight
yeah,
was the thing that it was right there. You know, I grew up on, my parents are from Castle Hill and that area, so it was only like natural that I ended up, you know, going to Starlight. And yeah, I just, years later now I think about it, and I'm definitely so grateful. I mean, everybody that's commenting and stuff, like, because I have different memories with each person. Um, and I don't know. I'm excited to even get in, you know, digging a little deeper now.
no, absolutely. Because for me, like you said, it's important for the audience to know too. We were in the same groups at points. Like we did juniors together, we did Fuss Out together, we did Heartbreak Boys together, and we'll get to the Heartbreak Boys after. But for us, we always kind of butted heads, and it's everybody knows, and I think it's important for people to understand is that we had the same vision, but
Absolutely.
we were just kind of tunneled. And then for me, being in a group instead of just the regular classes, I was told, and I was told I had to have a role. This was you're here, he's here, and you do this. But I was the stubborn kid saying we were in a group, so where was the group? So, but for me, then I said, and I don't know if you ever seen New Edition?
Yes, of course.
So I used to consider myself the Bobby Brown of the fucking group. Because I said to myself, okay, cool. Y'all don't want to listen? I'm gonna make you listen. And then the thing is, we definitely clashed, but over the years, we learned how to communicate with one another.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and for me, growing with you, it was definitely essential because in reality, from everyone I ever danced with, and I was telling you this privately that I was looking at old photos of classes we were in, and somehow we were always positioned, or a lot of the classes we were
We're
positioned,
connected.
we were connected in some way, and with especially with Edwin, I loved that when he would see us fight, he would literally just keep telling us how we were just a team, and that do not let, no matter what's going on,
I
you
mean,
guys are a
it's
team.
it's what he got from David. Is how David saw things. He didn't want to hear none of that nonsense of y'all don't get along or y'all this or y'all no y'all team or y'all team, because that's all I
Yeah,
want to hear. Pretty much. And again, but we were young, having two different experiences while collectively having the same experience.
yes,
And again, we had the same vision, but uh, our ways of communicating at the time, it was very difficult because we also loved where we were,
yeah,
so it creates that complex of like, I hate you, I love you.
yes,
uh, it was very much that thing. And yeah, I think it's great that we're talking because our relationship has grown. And you know you are someone who saw me from the beginning and up till now, and the evolution that's come with that. We saw the evolution of Starlight, we saw the evolution of the salsa scene, we've seen the evolution of kid groups and studios. And I mean, we saw a lot of the things that evolved out of Starlight as well, and a lot of the fruition of the seeds that David planted.
yes, and that is true. The seeds that David planted, because he definitely planted them in different ways of giving the older boys a chance, the younger boys a chance, the older girls and the younger girls, creating
Absolutely.
groups like Fuerza Gigante as well, that then brought a collective of kids saying, all right, if the more you're progressing, we're going to give you the chance to become again a group.
Right.
Instead of, for me, I loved Heart and Soul and what you guys did just as much as I love Juniors, just as much as I love Heartbreak Boys.
Absolutely.
And for me, like you said, we were going through the same experience, but almost differently. Uh, I looked up to you more than, and I could never tell you that because we would never get those. Because at those moments when
we
we
didn't
were
have
younger,
we didn't have those moments back then. Oh,
yeah. And for me, I think as we got older, we were growing and communicating better, but again, we were still finding ourselves. We were
absolutely.
finding our own path.
Mhm.
And even though we were growing up with one another and going to rehearsals and doing routine after routine, we had to learn each other even more because as we're growing, we're
We're
really
also
finding.
evolving and changing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And for me, um, what were like those moments to you that kind of like made you realize? I always wanted to know this from you. What was one of, like, it could have been a performance, it could have been a congress or a festival. Where was that moment that just clicked and said, okay, I'm gonna take this to the next level?
Ooh. You know what? I think it's a collection of moments, but I think when really it's I remember the Junior Heartbeat Boys the first time we came to LA.
Hmm.
And I mean, we were decked out. We had jumpsuits that said our names on them. I think we had bandanas that said our names on them and it said Junior Heart. I mean, we were like decked out.
Yeah.
But even though I had been to the New York Congress, I had never seen, first of all, a Congress of this magnitude.
Hmm.
Because I think at this time it was in the tent. If
Yes, it was. I think near. I believe it was near
Oh
the
no!
state.
Or maybe it was right before it was in the tent. I think it like maybe the year after it. Somewhere in those lines. But it was another because then I met Albert Torres, and then
Yeah.
I'm seeing Al Liquid Silver for the first
Yeah.
time. I'm seeing all these like major people from around the world, and I was just like, and I remember LA just looking like a whole nother universe to me, like with
Hmm.
the palm trees, and I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And I was just like, it was another again, congresses for me back then, like it was like a mecca of like a utopia of people. I don't know, maybe because I was so small that I didn't really was worried about problems. I was more just seeing people collectively be so invested into salsa, and for me I was like, I think those moments, especially again coming to LA for the first time, I knew I was like, wow, I something in me just like was like, I love this. And I think again it's a collection of moments only because every time that I performed, anytime I traveled somewhere, I it was a new thing. It was, going
Hmm.
to Puerto Rico and that was, all these different moments really, really, and then, I mean, again, watching again, David didn't just do congresses in New York. David was all over the place. And I knew that. And then watching, obviously Edwin kind of evolve, I at that moment and when I was young, I mostly identified with him because I was like, he performs like I do or like
Yeah.
similarly, and he was very charming. Everybody loved Edwin, even especially David. So you could not love Edwin
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
especially David. So it was like, okay, and then watching him evolve, and I remember his like going away party, like those are things that I remember, and watching him go off and do his thing, and I don't know, I just always felt there was more, but I also think that has to do with experiences I had while in Starlight,
Hmm.
things that happened to me while I was there, that kind of made me mature faster in different ways. So I had to become a little more independent. I had to become a little more like, what's next, instead of because something in my world wasn't working.
Hmm.
As far as everything was great, and then things weren't so great, and so I had to figure out, okay, really, like, I have this talent, and oh my god, how much do I love dancing? Like, if you know me, you know, and I think from there, anything that I had thought when I was young, like I knew I was gonna go to LA. I knew, like from 13, I was like, I'm going to LA, I'm going to LA,
Yeah.
I'm going to LA. Um, I just was determined to make those things happen once I
Yeah.
got the chance. And I just really took any chance that was given to me. I just really took it and I ran with it.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was meeting Matthew from Alvin Ailey in church and him molding me to get into LaGuardia, and taking every opportunity to really just, what's next, how can I be better, how can I be better. I just
Yeah.
refocused my life onto just dance specifically, and just was like, I'm gonna take this and make it, because I had to refocus myself, if you will,
Hmm.
on something that I loved and something that I didn't want to be taken away from me.
Yeah.
to a certain extent, you know.
And like I hear, you talking about being in of a dark place at a time because you love dance so much, but there were things happening in your life, in your
Yes,
personal life, that were conflicting. Um,
absolutely.
and I think it's definitely important for people to understand more or less like your journey because it goes so much deeper than dance.
Right,
It goes so much deeper than the obstacles. It's really about how you overcame them.
right,
But it is important for people to understand, you know, what it took for you to get here.
absolutely. And I'm going to be honest, like, many people know this, some people don't, but from the age of 8 to, I believe, 13, while I was involved with Starlight, I was being sexually assaulted by an instructor that was pretty well known
Mhm.
at the studio. Um, and that experience, while I was having this out of body experience because I'm so happy and I was doing so many, again, I was so seen to some extent. Everybody knew who I was. This is great, salsa. But at the same time, a part of my childhood, if you will, was being stricken from me.
Yeah.
Um, and, it's, I think it's wild because, this dance has meant so much to me and to so many of the people that I'm sure are tuning in right now. And David and Starlight, but at the same time, I was a baby. I was an infant, if you will. I was a kid, and while I was having these adult experiences, I was also being exposed to things that I shouldn't have been exposed to.
Yeah.
And people I felt were more worried about me being star Timothy, which is what created really the tension between me and anyone else, and me and you,
Mhm.
because I was just be that, just
Yeah.
be the star, just be okay with doing that. Um, and then, it got to the point where, I got a little older. This person's still around, and it felt like people were turning a blind eye
Mhm.
because at a certain point during my Starlight years, I had drawn back, but this person's involvement in the studio had only grown.
Yeah.
Um, and so when you have that person has influence, staying over people's houses, being in the routines, things that were not professional,
Mhm.
and it weren't things that David nor Edwin ever taught us.
Yeah.
So, it got to the point where I was worried about other kids, other
Yeah.
people, uh, and I felt like, why aren't people saying anything, or what is it about this situation where people are choosing to kind of, and I'm not talking about the kids, I'm talking about, I've heard comments, I've heard all sorts of comments, but and I don't want to dig too deep, but that's what happened. And I unfortunately, I kept going.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I kept going,
Yeah.
and I kept moving, and I kept the salsa, was still doing everything. But at the same time, I grew very bitter and very angry,
Mhm.
especially as I become an adult, and you see how some things have changed and a lot of things haven't.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not just me. When it comes to the salsa scene, it's about, you know, David wanted to create a safe space.
Yeah.
Everybody's thing, they know David, and he would always say, to get people off the street. That was
Yeah.
Edwin has told the story, you know, everybody knows it. And I think at some point the space was no longer safe.
Yeah.
Um, and that's unfortunate because, again, while I was fortunate enough to even say my truth and speak, I unfortunately had to be the one to tell some another adult, this is happening, this happened to me. It wasn't somebody that approached me. It wasn't that it happened and I told somebody. It
Mhm.
was, wow, I see this is happening to other people and nobody's doing anything about it. So I'm going to have to do something about it at 15 years old.
Yes. And man, hearing this, it just brings back so much memories because as we talked about our dysfunction at one point, and I would tell you about my frustration, a
Absolutely.
lot of people didn't realize that as you were involved in this situation, I was actually a person on the outside that was seeing it. I was
Absolutely.
a person on the outside that was angry, but because I was younger, a lot of people did not want to listen, but it was also the tone I was using wasn't being received because
Right.
everybody would call me angry. I'm the angry kid. I'm always pissed off. But if you noticed, who was I pissed off at? It was mainly
Right.
that one person.
Right.
I still remember getting kicked out of classes for always being concerned about what was going on because this person, they had so much control with making routines,
I
putting
mean,
people
a
in.
lot of control, a lot of control.
Yeah, and imagine a kid like myself that has danced just as long as you, maybe a little bit longer, but for literally almost 7 to 8 years, I was always in the back. And the fact is, I remember this person telling me when I asked him in front of everybody, why do I always have to be in the back? And for a person who was years ahead of me to tell me, because I don't like you,
Mm.
because I don't respect you.
And you know, we sort of touched on this privately, and I told you the fact that even an adult would think that was okay to say in front of other children, again in a space that's supposed to be safe. No matter how somebody felt about you, it should have been taken more seriously because again, this thing was not just affecting me; it was affecting other kids, and people were just not didn't want to hear that.
Mhm.
They didn't want to hear. They didn't want to hear that it was happening before me, and they didn't want to hear that it was happening after.
Yeah.
You know,
And
and unfortunately, somebody like you, where somebody like that has so much control, what do?
yeah,
Because if you talk to anyone, you're crazy, or
yeah,
you're just annoying, or you're just being diamond.
yes.
You know, and then but again, how do you're now an adult, and you're like, again, you were a kid. You weren't. It wasn't even your place to say
Yeah,
something.
you know,
You know, and the fact that you could see as a child tells me that other people could see, they just chose to be blind.
yeah. And like you said, it wasn't just you, it was so many others. And for me, having no relation to him and watching it happen every weekend and to see it from afar, I knew that I couldn't just stop speaking. I had to keep speaking.
Yeah.
And when things unveiled later on in the future, I still remember having that one meeting that because I remember that when everything started transpiring, that they
Woo,
had kind of
child.
they protected you away from it. And
Oh
for the,
no, I was gone. You would. I mean, I was
yeah,
ghost. I was like,
and for me, and I love that we can talk about this because a lot of the people who were around that time knew what happened, but they didn't know the people specifically.
mm,
And the fact is, I was watching it, and I remember vividly when we all had a meeting, and the adults told us what happened. And I remember looking, I looked at TJ, and I looked at somebody else to my left, and I looked up, whoever was speaking, and they asked us, does anybody want to say anything? And I raised my hand and I said, so, and I vividly asked everyone, so I was fucking crazy.
I
And
mean,
and I said it like that, and I'm sorry my language was harsh, but I've been saying this for years, but now y'all listen. I'm glad it's better late than never, but
absolutely.
I wanted
And
everyone.
I want people, you know, to really understand too, like when this happened, you know, I've received phone calls like, "How could you?
Mhm,
How could you do this to him?" I'm a child,
mhm,
but I was being asked by other people, how could you do this to him? How could you do this to this person? As if I you know, you were old enough at 8 years old. I was old enough to know, you know, and hearing things like that didn't happen to my kid, or how you know, and just basically the whole you know, people now realizing that this is a lot deeper than me, and it has everything to do with how we see our spaces and the things we choose not to see and the behaviors we choose not to acknowledge, and the behaviors we allow to continue within our community.
Yeah.
You know, again, whether it be sexual assault, whether it be misogyny, whether it be anything else, wrong is wrong.
Yes.
But I was, again, very fortunate because something in me didn't quit. Yeah, I had maybe left Starlight for a year or so. And I think people need to understand too, like at that point when I come back, I had said I didn't want to do heart and soul, and I really want people to understand, like, I wasn't in a space to be doing any of those things because I was not safe.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
and I definitely agree because, like you said, you weren't the only one, but you became such a pivotal force in that type of discussion because we all knew you, and as you said, you were known as the star, so we couldn't believe that this could happen to the star. But for me, I wanted people to know that any dysfunction that me and Timothy had, that was in the past because we didn't know each other. We were
we
just
didn't. Yeah, we didn't
we were
know.
put into something and we had to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And then as we grew and situations like this were being brought to the forefront,
Right.
the one thing I can say is that from there, the school really shifted its whole mission and reevaluated its priority. And they
Absolutely.
really made sure that all of us were protected at the end of the day because
Absolutely.
unfortunately this situation happened. But, and I'm going to say this, it was people like Willie specifically. Don't get me
Specifically.
wrong, there were many other teachers there and there were many other
But
authoritative figures there.
and I want to talk about Willie for a second because I know many people have their quorums. So sorry. Sorry.
It's okay.
I know many people have their, you know, issues with Willie over the years, but
Mhm.
what people need to realize is that Willie continued David's legacy by providing us with a safe space again, you know, and the reason why even our relationship was able to grow, my relationship with Nelson, my relationship with Marco, Brandon, TJ, you know, because she took us and she said, no, this is why we're going to do things.
Yep.
Y'all are going to get it together. Y'all going to look out for each other. Y'all going to love each other. And I mean, you had three queer boys with three
Yeah.
straight men. And but there was no, that was the last things on our
Yeah,
minds.
it was. It was. It was.
It really was. And, you know, it really was. And, you know, if it wasn't for Willie, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know, man, because, you know, people need to understand the person I opened up to, the person why this whole thing is even possible today is because Willie gave me a space to say my piece.
Yes.
And then that took on a life of its own at the end of the day. But if I hadn't opened up then, I don't know, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know where I would be today, you know, and I got to thank someone for that.
Yeah. And I think that was the most important because we grew the experience you had went through for almost 8 years. It went from heart and soul. It went from Fuerza. It went from the juniors and going further into the Heartbreak Boys. And the one thing I loved Willie about, and it took me so long just to like take a step back, say that like Willie was more of a parent than my own parent. And it was because I was always at dance. I would go home,
Right,
do
right.
my
We were
homework, go to
always
rehearsal, come
right.
back. And for me, my own issues at home, to come to somewhere, and I had a woman that she didn't care. She was gonna be tough with me, and I didn't know how to
and
receive that.
it didn't matter whose kid you
Yes,
were.
and
It,
that's what I respected.
she don't give a damn whose kid you are.
She
Not even
doesn't.
her. Like everybody's
She's a
treated the
TJ.
same way, and that is how
Exactly.
it is.
Like, and one thing she was saying earlier was the car. When we were always in her car,
And I always
that
had to sit in the back because I was so small.
yes, we like the fact is like, dude, we used to be 5, 6, 7 deep in her car going to performances. Like
For hours,
this woman, and I
dealing
love
with
her.
us and
Oh
our
my
shit.
goodness. People says me and my grandmother. My grandmother. And the one thing is this, and a lot of people don't know, the situation that happened when it came into fruition, when it came into a public light, people don't remember was that it hit me even harder because David died, my grandmother died, then the situation with with this gentleman happened, and that right there was just like I'm losing two people that was the most important to me in my dance career. And the only
Yeah,
other person that I could actually look, or two other people, to be honest, specifically, was Edwin and Willie.
absolutely.
And for me, I had to say, I'm going to take these people that I lost and I'm going to channel that and I understand it. And I have to then now appreciate the boys that I am with and the
Right.
woman that is taking care of us because she didn't have to. She chose to because she saw something in us. And
Right.
like my boy, like TJ, the brothers, man, like
The brothers,
people,
truly,
people don't,
truly.
yeah, like at one point in the Heartbreak Boys, it was me, it was you, it was TJ, it was Brandon, it was Marco, it was Nelson, it was
The
Chris,
boys, the
it was
boys.
Jonathan, it was like, and Chris says at one point it was 9 deep.
For no reason.
And I'm gonna tell you this, and listen, and like Willie just said right now, she says, put it out there, say his name. I'm going to say his name, Michael
Please.
Figueroa.
No, and
Michael
you know what?
Figueroa.
I wanted to say his name, but the reason why I took a moment is because there's another level to this. I also want people to understand when this also happened, when this man was convicted, which I also want people to understand. For anyone to say anything, we already beat the odds because
Yeah,
we opened our mouths. And you have to realize there's so many kids out there where the space is not open for these kids to open their mouths. And that's why you don't know.
yeah,
And the problem is people need to know it's happening more often than you think. It happens all the time, and it happens in spaces like studios, in families, in churches. That's where it happens. It's always people that you are connected to, and people need to be really open to the actual facts. And the
yeah,
fact is that after that was all said and done, this man, Michael Figueroa, was still trying to involve himself in the salsa community. And there were people that say, "Oh, that never happened. Oh, that's a lie." You have people, I mean, I'm telling you, people like Mario B. Thank God people like him know the truth
yeah.
because he's a witness to Michael Figueroa doing stuff like that and trying to re-involve himself in other places because that's what predators do.
Yeah.
And
It-
the fact is, the facts are the facts. Okay, this man molested me and many more kids, and I thank God I opened my mouth, and I thank God for people like Willie and my parents and people like uh, you know um, people like my sister who allowed me to somehow be myself enough to speak up because again people don't want to talk about it and people don't want to have the discussion, but these discussions must be had, because people like that, when you don't say their names, they keep on doing.
It's true. And like your sister just wrote, he still teaches in PA under another name.
Well, yeah, because when he was in jail, he changed his name so people wouldn't know he was a child molester because you get fucked up in jail for doing shit like that.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm sorry, actually, Jackie writes not PA, he is in North Carolina.
Who
And the
cares?
fact,
That's
yeah,
irrelevant.
and the thing is this is that at the end of the day, what happened, what culminated from that specific situation, the one most important thing was Willie and the rest of the Starlight family made sure that we were going to be protected from here on in.
Absolutely.
And people like
Absolutely.
Willie that said, I'm going to take control of the Heartbreak Boys. This
Yeah.
is my
No, really, really. She really, really took control, and again, I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for people because really, I mean, if it wasn't for you boys, again, because I was safe with y'all and because I was safe with Willie, the space was there for the truth to be told. And I thank Willie for doing the right thing because, you know, I can, people don't also realize what that meant for Willie and for people like Eddie. You
yeah,
know, when you're someone who's protective of kids, like really protective, like somebody like Willie is, somebody tells you something like that. Now she had to take the steps. Now she has to take me to tell my parents. She had to take me to tell other. She had. People don't realize like this wasn't like it's not Law and Order in 30 minutes. This is done. This is
yeah,
a big part of my life because even after that happened, it had more had to happen. We had to go to court. I was missing out on my moments in high school because I was too busy in court trying to send this man to jail. People don't realize that my whole Starlight family was cut off from me because I couldn't have social media. I couldn't have
yeah,
be in touch with people. I couldn't even be involved with people. Even the people I was involved in the case with, I couldn't be in touch with.
yeah,
So my whole life turned upside down.
yeah.
And it's people don't realize the consequences
hmm
these things come with.
Yeah, no, I agree because, like you said, it wasn't just you; it was so many others, and it really like made your whole like childhood and teenage experience. It kind of warps it, and it makes you grow up faster. But
Absolutely.
I think too, like Brandon said, she took the responsibility of the entire situation because she already had three children of her own in the school, and one of them was already in the group with us, and
Yes.
she took the
Yes.
role as the mother and the matriarch of it. And I appreciate her so much for that because
Absolutely.
for me, when that situation happened and they kind of separated you, I was really upset because I wanted that chance that I have now to tell you that I knew what was happening and I was speaking up for you and the others, but my voice was just deemed to be an aggressive kid that didn't know what he was talking about.
Absolutely.
And for me, like being kicked out of classes, it was well worth it because I was right at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
my thing is, I love that what grew from that was the brotherhood because also us and the Heartbreak Boys, I remember us talking privately and saying, whoever, no matter if it was Tim, whoever else was a part of this, we're going to make sure they're okay. Because again, we can't be in a group together
Right.
and just single
Right.
someone out. And because again, like we were told, hey, this person is not going to be here for a while because of this. We totally understood. And he said again, and oh my God, I'm sorry, even Ashley writes, I definitely remember Diamond getting kicked out all
All
the
the
time.
time.
All the time. It was like it's insane. Even Alejandro is insane. Look at you now. Oh my God, thank you. I mean, for me, what I loved was with Willie, with also Valerie,
Oh
Brandon.
yes, and
Lover.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to leave out. I mean, a lot of these parents, really. I mean, that trip. I remember Willie was like, "Okay, we need to get away,"
Yeah,
and these are things that people don't realize. Like this woman
yep,
was doing for us. Like even after those circumstances, she asked my parents, like, "Hey, just he needs like he needs 2 minutes to
yeah,
like process," and she planned this whole like this
yeah,
whole thing so we could go. And I remember, I mean, it was that again, moments like that were simply priceless because we were safe, we were free of judgment, we could trust each other no matter how different we were, and that's where our relationship started to really flourish. And you guys, I mean, the brotherhood that I was supposed to be having this whole time, this is when I felt it.
yeah,
This is when I was like, wow, this is what friendship and this is what brotherhood and looking out for people really should look like and feel like, even though I was going through this horrible situation.
Yeah, and like we would go to Valerie's house, and I still remember that we were young teenagers having therapy sessions with one another, speaking our pieces, saying,
Absolutely.
I didn't like that you did this
Absolutely.
about me, or I didn't like
Boop.
this moment, so we're gonna bring it to a head. And mind you, there's people in the real world that never have those conversations.
Absolutely.
And I never would take it for granted because it helped me develop an even more closer relationship because I always remember Edwin, Eddie Camacho, Willie always telling us that we're doing this because we want y'all to remember each other after Starlight.
Right.
We don't want
Right.
this just to be you finish Starlight and you never remember each other.
And just
Yeah, and
yeah.
for me, I think the growth of our brotherhood helped the situation. But then, like you said, fast tracking after Junior Boys, we were Heartbreak Boys, and then we started meeting, traveling to places like Texas, and we started to meeting. I remember the name Recreation. It was
Yes.
Chucky and Recreation, and I
Yes.
remember
Yes.
all of them,
Yes.
and that was the and like you said before, you had a group of three gay males, and then you had three or four or five straight males who coexisted. And when we went to different places in Texas, and we met other guys and other people who shared our similarities, and we all
Right.
coexisted, and we learned from one another, and that was
Right.
really important.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, again, those things, those kind of things are priceless, you know? Like that brotherhood for me will always be imperative because it taught me, you know? And even, you know, even to backtrack, like
Mhm.
during my time at Starlight, you know, I had started going to a church in the Bronx called Crossroads.
Yes.
And, you know, because you asked me earlier, like, what led me to, you know, to really think there was more, you know, to take it to the next level. And there's so many components. You know, I went to this church that had a kind of like an arts foundation where they
Yeah.
would teach different types of arts, like anything from music to art, to actual art, to dance. And I ended up meeting people like my best friends from in New York and Matthew Rushing of Alvin Ailey, and that kind of led me to, you know, LaGuardia Arts, which, you know, those little moments on top of the brotherhood stuff, those come, even again, even despite the bad, those moments adding up together, you know, the resurgence of my spirituality,
Yeah.
you know, going to LaGuardia where there was more people like me, more people who spoke my language, just as weird as me. They love dance and they want to learn. And, you know, New York City was like its own mecca, you know, outside of the Bronx. And all that stuff. And then, you know, and then joining Yamule. And
Yes.
all these different components were things that really were propelling me because again, because of this thing that had happened to me, I just try to refocus on dance and put my being into art, and
Yeah.
you know, and just I was went from salsa then evolving into modern and ballet and jazz and hip hop, and growing and growing and growing and growing. And again, despite all that bad stuff, there were amazing things happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to disregard those things too, because I am a very blessed person. And the friendship again that I have with you guys is will always be priceless. The safe place that Willie gave us will always be priceless. David believing in me will always be priceless. You know, my parents affording me the opportunity to go to all around the world will always be priceless. You know, those things will always have a strong place in my heart. I just think it's important to acknowledge the truth and acknowledge that things could be better. And it
Yes.
doesn't mean things were horrible. It just means things can be better. But they're not. They can't be better until they're acknowledged.
Yes.
and they can't be better until people realize their part in it,
Yes.
or in whatever space.
I totally agree because you can't be ignorant to something for so long and ignore that it's there. I think many people, what happens is they see a situation and they're more afraid of the consequences they might face. Just like having this conversation, I believe there was 110% needed because, again, it is a form of therapy because we have never, just me and you, have never had this conversation
No, never.
and we never knew.
And that's the thing. Most people. I really thought about it when we talked a few days ago, and I was like, wow, like people really don't know what. You can have a perception of what happened. You could have been told certain things, but people don't really know what happened and what was happening and how it happened. Um, and I think it's very important. I think it's yeah, I think it's very important, especially because a lot of these people are still involved in the salsa community.
Yeah,
And I want people to be their best selves and be able to add to the community the best way they can in a positive way. And you know, I think a lot of times we let negativity slip
hmm,
because we make excuses for it. We make excuses for how people treat us and the things people do and the things people ignore. And I think what people are learning now and as a whole is that those things it can't just be okay to shrug things off, and it can't be okay to turn a blind eye, because again, if you're in a community, everything you do affects other people.
yeah. And I definitely believe that you are the example of bravery, courage, and perseverance because, especially in our community, these situations happen too many times, one too many. And a lot of times, these individuals, and when they don't have that support system, their life can really take a whole different path.
Absolutely.
And I believe that when these situations happened, they wanted to protect you. And I really was thankful that when we talked and you told me how you did go to LaGuardia and you met other people just like you.
Absolutely.
And again, that is a safe space. You leaving Starlight, having that time away to find yourself and realize, because remember, we were in Starlight, it was like a full-time job.
It was you were it was a part of your world. That was your world. So
Yeah,
when you started to slowly step out of it, then you can really see it for what it is and not yourself engulfed in it.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. And for you to then go to LaGuardia, and then I think as well, you took that time away, but then you came back.
Yeah.
And that was really great because then we all could still perform with one another until that cutoff age, or like until you finish high school or somewhat.
Right.
But it was really interesting because we had a conversation on when I was kicked out of the group, and that was a moment of, with your situation, you needed that time away, and you got that time away under
Right.
that circumstance. But when I was kicked out, it was almost a premonition because I needed to take a step away, but it was almost I was waiting for an opportunity to arise to give me that,
Absolutely. I understand that completely.
and I think again, I think every person, when you're in a situation that you really feel that there is no solution, sometimes acting out is the next course.
Yeah,
And
I mean, again, you were still a kid, so
yeah,
what else do you do? You
yeah,
know,
even Ashley says, "Coño, diamond, stop
that
getting kicked out of shit." But it was stories like that, and for me, I think, and I tell people, me being taken out of that group for about 4 or 5 months was the greatest thing because I needed some time away. I loved you guys, but
And-
being with you guys for so long, it can like,
right, right. It was just again, we were engulfed in Starlight as its own separate kind of world, and we in different ways needed to separate ourselves in
Mhm.
order to come back to it. And I was thankful that I came back and was able to teach,
Mhm.
there. I was able to, teach the sweethearts. and
Yes.
and and a lot of the stuff that I took was, one, I was around when David was still alive, so
Yeah.
I can simultaneously, you know still fulfill his legacy in the
Yeah.
studio despite whatever. And two, again, it was be able, with my girls at Starlight at the time, I took on very much of that Edwin David attitude. Like, I don't care if you're girls, I don't care if I'm a guy. I could be 16 and you could be 16, but when we're in this space, like, it's
Yeah.
professional all day. This is a group. If y'all gonna be a group, you gotta be a group. If you want to show up on time, you gotta show up on time. If you don't want to be here, there's the door.
Yeah.
Because I wanted, again, and that may have been harsh at my, like, for my 16-year-old self, but it was really to say, if you want to be here because this is gonna be great.
Yeah.
But if you don't, don't take away from other people either.
Yeah.
And again, I was only like 16 and then going to Yamule and teaching at Starlight, but I wanted to teach younger people and be able to also share what I had learned. Um, and at that point, again, my life just kind of continued.
Hmm.
It kind of just jumped back into gear. I was teaching, I moved to a different studio. Now I'm in high school, and things kind of just shifted in its own way. Again, there was never that. For me, it was like, not the chapter never really closed to start a new one. It kind of just like, okay, we're gonna put a stop on this chapter and continue here. And that's where I think sometimes with my own life, like, there are moments where you think back, and I only hope that I'm doing for others what I needed and what people like Willie did for us, and creating these places where you can look up to someone the same way we looked up to Edwin and the same way
Yeah.
we looked up to David. And and I I think too, but yeah, sorry, I'm just like rambling
No,
now
no, no.
because
I appreciate it because a lot of times these thoughts that you have might not have ever been able to come out,
yeah,
or it hasn't been able to come out in a public format. And I think it's important because, again, just as you went through this, I was on the journey with you. I
yeah,
just back seat and was watching it.
right,
The great thing was, like you said, after Starlight, you had to move on, and you moved to, and you still actually stuck with the scene. You
yeah,
wanted to learn more and more, and
absolutely.
like you said, you joined Yamule for a period of time.
Hmm. Well, and you know what? It's funny because it kind of stuck with the theme of me being the youngest.
Mhm.
Because even when I went to Yamule, I was in high school. I was probably only like 14, maybe, if not, yeah, probably 14. Um, and again, now I'm dancing with like 26-year-olds and
Yeah,
35-year-olds, and that took on its own life, but it also allowed me to continue dancing and maybe just put my focus somewhere else. And again, school at that moment, because the school I was going to took off its own life of its own, and I was able to refocus my energy into something positive, um, and see that there was. I still knew there was. I had I didn't feel despair,
yeah,
but you brought up something earlier that really I want people to hear again too. Is that, like, I am lucky that I didn't go left and decided to go right,
yeah,
because again, I'm someone who had the chance to open his mouth and I thank God, whoever's watching me, the angels from above, that I did. But you have people need to understand why women don't um, report
mhm,
sexual assault right away, or people, why wouldn't you say anything, or why wouldn't you say anything sooner? And it's because again, I was at this very young age, I was faced with questions like, how could you do this to somebody else?
yeah,
And people don't know what that feels like. People don't know. We talked a little bit earlier. I love you too. We talked a little bit earlier about gender and me being a queer person of color. And for me, a lot of the stuff that I dealt with was, is he gay because he's gay, or is he gay because this is what happened to him?
Yes.
And respectfully, I'm just gay. But, again, like, that was taken away from me. That decision, that experience of finding my sexuality, of experiencing love and affection all the same, was forced on me and was taken from me.
Yes.
And for many years, especially the reason why I was going to church and stuff was because obviously I love boys, 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 boys. But that stuck with me. Like, people only think I'm gay because I was assaulted, or my family only thinks I'm gay because this happened, and and I didn't want that to become my identity. So I think at some point, I think people that I grew up with or was in Starlight with, and to a certain extent feel like I separated myself, or that maybe I disliked them, or stuff like that. But what people need to realize, that like when I moved to LA, it was, I had, even with Yamule, I didn't leave on a good experience. So my experience with the salsa scene at that point was, for me, like, officially over.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm in this space where I think I'm safe, and I'm being played again.
Yeah.
And now I'm older. Now I'm 17.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I mean, what is it? Like, what is it? The community? Is it the way people function in the community? And at that point, again, I think people feel like I'm very anti, my past, or anti the Bronx, or anti, being really involved, and I just stopped salsa. But you have to realize also that, like, I had to take myself out. I had to fall in love with dance, period, because my love for salsa it kind of just vanished.
Yeah.
And it was very unfortunate, And it wasn't until maybe years later where Edwin was like, put on those goddamn salsa shoes, and I finally started to create art with salsa again. But again, it just built up bitterness and resentment, and seeing the cycle. I may have lived in LA, but I very much still know people in the scene, and know and seeing how people circulate amongst groups and stuff like that. It was always very interesting to me to watch people work with people that may not have their best interest.
Yeah.
And they know that, but it's because these people are the clout of the day, and people want to be a part of that. But again, that all falls under, like, why do we consider a safe space a luxury?
Yes.
It's a necessity. It's like, if you're going to create a school for kids, the kids have to be safe. If you're going to create a school for salsa, you need to protect the authenticity of the salsa and the world. And you can't be letting these misogynist people lead the culture and speak for the culture and set the standards, because it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense where there's people like you who, you're not trying to open a studio or do or lead a whole team right now, and maybe that's a dream of yours. I don't know, but you are doing the work of hearing the people, while there's people that are leading, that community, who are not doing the work.
Yes.
You want to have these conversations because they're all important when it comes to women, when it comes to gender. I know plenty of women. I can't talk to sexual assault, but the way women are treated in the salsa scene, period, that's something that has gone on for so long. But again, when you have the big men that run everything, and again, it's not to say to speak to other people's experience, but again, I was a part of it. Then I was a part of it in an even bigger sculpture, bigger picture, being part of Yamule, and then totally taking myself out of it and really being like, whoa, this is a lot.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I there was this thing I kept saying to myself. Like, I remember when I was young, and I'd be like, why are people so mean? Like, I just want to dance. And I remember I would always say that I just want to dance. Like, what is it? Like, what do people have
Yeah.
against? Because even when I was, Starlight, Shine, blah, 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 I had adults that weren't so nice to me,
Hmm.
and I was a kid. So the adults were setting the standards for the kids.
Yeah.
And then when I got to, bigger places, while still in the Bronx, I just kept seeing it. Like, it doesn't matter how nice you are or how, because I knew I was talented, but I also knew I'm a freaking good person.
Yes.
So what is it about this world that I am not meshing with?
Hmm.
And it's all those things. Again, once that happened to me as a child, once you see things, you can't unsee them. So once I was already mature enough to be in a place like that, my brain was also maturing in ways that maybe other people's just they don't see things, or they don't want to see things, or they just don't have to mature in
Yeah.
that way.
No, no, I agree. And I think what it is that your vulnerability, your innocence was taken away at an early age, and it made your mind work a little bit different as you got older. It made
Absolutely.
you see the world in its realness, because what happens is, as we're kids, we're kind of told this is how it is when the older people tell us. And
Right, but then to see for yourself, you're like,
yes.
that's not how it is. And so, and I think I was saying this to my husband earlier. When I moved to LA, it was a chance for me to recreate my own world, a way to meet people that didn't know Star Timothy or Chubby Timothy or little. Oh, that I love that people have those comparisons and they see me in that way, but that's just not who I am now.
Yes.
And this I have taken it upon myself now to make sure I create spaces,
Mhm.
and I'm in a place where I can serve others and actually speak my truth and speak it honestly, and um, and I want again, I want that for everyone. I want that for anyone who's in the salsa scene, anyone who's in any scene of any sort, whether it's sports, school, whatever it is. I want people to be able to be in safe spaces, but you have to know that you have to create that safe space, not somebody else.
Exactly.
And again, I think because of these conversations, I have had moments where I've been bitter, angry, and resentful, and I couldn't figure out why. And as I got older, and a big part of it was falling in love.
Mhm.
It wasn't until I met my husband, because I had moved on my own at 17,
Yes.
and I was kind of doing my own thing. I was very like I was like, do this, checkpoint, 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 checkpoint. My life was on a trajectory. And then until I met my husband, all those walls, I mean, he really just like kicked me in the face,
Yeah.
because I was literally like, I was surrounded by brick walls in all four corners. I mean, all four sides.
Yeah.
And even though I'm so loving and so spiritually conscious and all this stuff, I wasn't existing in that, because until he came along, I never had to coexist with somebody like that on my level.
Yes.
Like, I had to explain, I had to get him to see me and use my mouth, really.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I was just like, oh, I'm just, people just won't get it. People just, whatever. I'm just on a different level. People just are just whatever they're in. And I didn't think anyone was going to get it.
Yeah.
Um, and now I feel like I'm in such a place where I can be vulnerable and be open and be honest, and it not come from a angry place or a resentful place. Because again, something that I think you were starting to get to is, look where I am now. I'm married to a beautiful man. um, I have all the things I've ever wanted, um, and I can create my own destiny every day, because that's my choice. And I'm in a safe space, and I make a safe space for other people in my home, for them to be themselves and to be whoever they want to be. And I can only hope that other people can do that for themselves, and hopefully for others. Again, going to LaGuardia and then getting into AMDA, American Musical and Dramatic Academy in California, was a whole new level, because then
Yeah.
I jumped into a school where now you had to choose, like you had to pay, you were paying to go here, so it's like
Yeah,
this is real. And if you're doing it somewhere like LA, you're you know, LA is not no joke. You know, New Yorkers probably do better in LA because we're already part of that, we're part of that grind, you know.
yes,
But LA is a very, is not for the faint of heart, if you will. You know, it's very pretty on the outside, you know, like most things, but it's really, I mean, I've been here for almost 10 years, and you know, I've worked my ass off
yeah,
to get where I am and to be where I am and to work with people I've worked with and to have the experiences I have. But again, through these experiences, I learned that there could be something better, that there is a different choice that can be made, that things can be different for everyone. But it's about the people that you're around, and it's about the spaces you create, and it's about you know, dealing with yourself and your own shit, you
yeah,
know. Um, because I think so many people, especially a lot of us are first or second generation or third generation, where our parents maybe have come from straight from Puerto Rico to New York, or straight from, you know, some other country to New York, and we were given like afforded opportunities maybe that our parents and
yeah,
our parents didn't have. And you know, again, is that whole attitude of that's just how things are. And I want people to understand that when you say things like that, it has consequences, and things can be different, and there's always room to grow. And no matter what age you are, there's always an opportunity to learn and to say, "Hey, I was wrong. How can you teach me? What can I offer you, rather than what can I take from you?"
yes.
You know, and I want people to see, especially those who knew David. That's what he did. He took something so small and planted seeds everywhere so that we could all be connected.
Yeah,
And if you really believed in his legacy, I really want people to consider that even in their own homes,
mhm.
you know, because it really starts from there and it branches its way out.
That is true because, like you said, it does start at home because, especially in the Latin community, in the Black community, and many communities, what happens is what they say: what happens at home stays at home.
Yeah,
Don't let your home business come into
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and what happens is too, a lot of our Latino males, a lot of times they're subject to discrimination. So when things happen to them, a lot of times they want to sweep it under the rug.
Right.
They want to pretend it didn't
And,
happen and move
and
on.
and again, something that I said earlier, a lot of you, the amount of stories that I've heard from people like, oh yeah, I mean, again, I'm one of those people that I've been able to share my story with multiple people across time, and it's always surprising to me the amount of people that one have had this experience,
Mhm.
who have been, you know, whether it be sexually assaulted or whatever it is, who can identify, but you know, I again, I have that now because I'm an adult, so I'm able to have these conversations with people without feeling, and I can talk about. I was able to process all these things,
Yeah,
but so many times I've heard of, oh, my uncle this used to touch me, or my, you know, my stepdad, and things are never brought to light in
yeah,
so many families, and people need to realize things continue like that because they're not talked about,
mhm.
because you don't want to be the bad guy, or you don't want to be separated from, or you don't want to be cut off, or
Yeah.
whatever, or your fear of whatever, you know. Yeah, I mean, whew, sorry.
I know it's okay, and your husband says, this is the kind of therapy we all need. And mind you, you don't even have to pay for it. This is free. It's a touching subject, and like I said, I've created this platform because I know a lot of the people I talk to, even those I'm meeting. I've known their stories, and I want to just allow them to tell their story. So
Absolutely.
while speaking to you, I love that you can expound and really get into detail on things because I think you're realizing as well in the comments, but you might have people in the future that will say, watching this interview helped me because it showed that I wasn't the only one.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
like you touched base, Alejandro says, "Don't be an enabler." Period. Absolutely. And Mikey says, "Yes." And then Alejandro says, "You know what, Alejandro? It's I appreciate the words, but more than anything, this type of discussion, I love that we could have a public forum for this because it shows that so many people were in that situation and how we grew from it. Because we hear so many sad stories of people who went through the same thing and didn't come out. They went
On the
left
other
instead
side.
of right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and like you said, um, when you left Starlight, sometimes you're expecting, okay, I'm leaving this type of atmosphere and I'm in an adult world, so things must be different. But you realize it only gets more challenging.
It only got more challenging. It really did only get more challenging, because now you're it's like playing in the jungle gym. Now I'm in the full wild forest,
Yeah,
and it's like fend for yourself.
yeah,
You know.
and I agree. I even see Willie says, "All my boys said yes." And Willie, I truly, for me, because I was the hardest one I know, and I appreciate you so much because you never stopped caring. Because a lot of times when I was younger, I took things for granted that a lot of you guys didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I always wanted you to know that even though we've talked privately, publicly, that I really did care. I really did understand. I really did see what was going on.
Right.
I never wanted you to. It's sad as it took this many years, but rather later than never to show you and to tell you that I was there.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
agree with stuff what was going on, but I was so thankful that you came out, a powerful person afterward because you went to AMDA and LA is a rough place. You went to Yamule. You had an experience there, whether it was positive or negative. You had that experience, and like you
Absolutely.
said,
And all those things led to now.
yeah, because like you said, in the dance scene, we do have a toxic masculinity issue. We do have a homophobic issue. We do have a gender role issue.
Which is
And
ironic because the costuming thing started with the gays.
yes,
The way people wear costumes now, I remember watching the men from Puerto Rico who were gay at the time who used to wear that stuff. People used to be like, "Ew, like it's
yeah,
so tight." And fast forward to today's age, everybody's wearing sequins and rhinestones. Two, a lot of the styling was taken from these men as well as Afro women and other people of other descent. There's a lot of components of. I remember I used to watch so many girls. I used to love styling, and even in Yamule, there were certain public figures that looked a certain way. Maybe I didn't realize it then, and I used to always be like, "Nah," but like she got the soul. Like, where is
yeah,
this? And I just remember like now I think about it. And like the way things may have just can be washed down, if you will.
yes,
Um, because I was like, give me that, like, give me,
yeah,
I may have been a little crazy, but I always felt like what I had was soul.
yeah,
It came from within. When I watched uh, Edwin, it came from, you know, it came from within. And now, again, it's so funny that the salsa scene is homophobic, but you still you take things, but then you don't acknowledge them. And it's weird that in a culture where you don't want that to happen to your culture, you do it within your culture.
yeah. And like you said, like people didn't want to acknowledge because I think what people wanted to do was say, okay, we have this issue, but let's kind of push it to the side and let's really just focus on what really is important is everybody dancing and we are unified, which in reality you're not because I've seen it from the dancing, from the filming side,
Mm,
from a spectator, from an audience member.
right,
The same people that are in these groups, people love that they dance, but people wouldn't even want to get to know these same people
right,
because again, they are fearing the unknown a lot of times because you don't know what their lifestyle, what their life is like.
right,
Let me not worry about getting to know. I just saw him; he
right.
did great in dancing. But
And something, and I can't speak to again everybody's experience because even past the words you can label like misogyny and stuff like that, you know, there's I think sometimes in the salsa scene a lacking of overall humanity, and what I mean by that is that like anybody is up for grabs as far as like I would see people talk about each other in such a diminishing way and then be face to face, like really friendly. And I saw that from the time I was in Starlight to even in my time in Yamule, where I was like, I'm getting mixed signals because people are just, it really had nothing to do with sexuality or somebody meant, it was just the overall attitude of
yeah,
like, of just talking about people, but then being friendly. And again, that was something I took from when I was young. And I was like, I need to make sure that no matter what friends I have and people I am in contact with, that that's not happening because I
yeah,
don't want to be in a studio with someone day and night and then I leave the studio and God knows what it's said about me.
hmm
Or because, and it's again maybe not about me, but you see it happen with other people when someone's
yeah,
not leaves the room, the commentary, and then when someone
yeah,
walks back in the room, it's like it never happened. And again,
yeah,
those are the things that proceed throughout time where you just shove it off or you don't say anything because you don't want to be the odd one out. But that's the overall attitude that people have towards each other, and that is not okay because I think there's a general respect level that has to um, precede all humanity.
yeah,
You know, no matter how different you are. Again, the salsa scene is supposed to be about it's supposed to be about the culture and
yeah,
dancing and keeping the culture alive. So when it becomes about certain individuals or certain ideals, then you kind of lose that facet because
yeah,
people are more worried about following trends than doing it because it's the passion. It's like I have to do it. Like we felt like we have to do it.
yes. It's
It's
true.
not like, oh, I'm gonna join this team because that's the I don't know. I can't speak for anyone else, but it's really like it has. You have to genuinely want to be a part of it and want to be a part of the community because then you're kind of just you can be toxic to it. And again, there's so many leaders within I think the salsa community where people hold up to a high regards, even if they know their overall like their character precedes them, but not in a good way.
Yeah, and like,
But they're still the top this or the top that, and it's like okay, so how much are your community is not going to change if that's what you're willing to forego respect and community for some kind of idea of what you want in the salsa world, you
yeah,
know.
I definitely I agree with you a lot because, like you said, you took a step away from the salsa scene, but you had family members that were still connected. Me being in it from about '96 until about present day, I'm watching the scene as it's growing, and I think what was truly missing, or what really shifted, was when you lost figures like David Melendez that really were keen on teaching the students, but teaching the community about the history.
Right.
And when the history starts to be lost, it's almost like a game of telephone. By the first sequence, you heard the truth, but by the end,
Yeah,
so
stuff
for
for it.
me, I think it's really irresponsible for a lot of dancers now or studio owners because nowadays in New York there's so many dance companies, and what it is many people now what they choose to do is they want to go onto the team that they see perform a lot and they have the great costumes and they travel to Europe. That's great. But what about the people? Because a lot of times in these companies, like yourself and others, what they did was they took advantage of your talent and they said, let's soak all that in, let's kind of drain it out. But what happens, what they say is there's always another one. There's
Right.
always going to be another Timothy. There's always going
Right.
to be someone.
Right.
But then they don't look at what they did, what the consequence of you soaking and taking all the nutrients from this person and then when you didn't need it anymore, you kind of just let it go.
Right.
And for me, I love is that a person like yourself that I've been watching ever since you even left Starlight, you going to AMDA, you doing different routines and different. I've seen different acts that you've done in LA, but also recently I've been seeing. I saw that you created your own short dance film. I believe it was called Living with Walls.
Yes,
Am I
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir. That's right. Yeah,
And I would love at least because I think from going from the past and
yeah.
really now we're at like the present day. It's
Yes.
a great way to segue really into the finale of knowing what you have been doing as
Yeah,
of
for
right now.
sure. You know what? I've always, because of going to AMDA, I was able to figure out that I loved all art.
Mm,
I love acting. I love singing. I love musical theater. I love history, especially the history of performing and everything like and stuff like that. And so a few years back in 2016, I did my first film, um, and that was just a great experience. It was the first time me taking my uh, talents, I guess, if you will, the things that I had learned, and then them into something that I created, directed, and I did the costuming, the makeup, and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, I really can do this. And on top of performing, started doing photography
mhm.
and stuff like that. So a few weeks ago, actually, this is how quick this happened. Um, I was reached. Somebody reached out to me that was holding this like quarantine short film uh, contest, basically,
Mm.
and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, But at that point, I had like I think 7 days to do it.
Yeah.
So I came up with this concept. I pretty much costumed it. I did the makeup. I shot it. I did the set, the lighting. I mean, pretty much one man show. And I had my husband and my good friend Emily Lavengood join me, and I created this whole film. That's not literally in black and white, but takes place in black and white.
Yes.
Um, and it's this whole idea around yin and yang and how much people. I think really the thing I wanted to touch on is how much we are connected to the world, and sometimes we don't realize it.
Mhm.
And we have yet, as a society, as a human society, to understand our connection between us and the universe, and
Yeah.
that the things that we put out into it are things. And yes, people call that karma because they're speaking in literal terms, but I mean as far as taking care of the earth and taking care of each other, and
Wow.
how we are very interconnected and interdependent is the word, because yes, they're different, but they need each other. And like
Mhm.
the colors black and white technically don't exist, but together you get the whole spectrum of colors.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm in a time in my life where I'm okay with exploring, whether it be photography or whether it be putting on some drag or doing club kid makeup and stuff like that. I'm starting to I know that there's so much more to life than labels and me. You can find the short film on
Yeah.
YouTube, and you could also find it on my IGTV, Timothy X Lewis on Instagram. Which, yeah, and I'll make sure I'll say that again. But
Yes.
sorry.
No, no worries.
So yeah, so I just created this short film, and that's basically what was the idea of taking these two different worlds. White has so much meaning as far as beauty, and there's so many labels on the color white, and so many labels. Black is usually death and
Yes.
bad things. So people don't realize, again, these sometimes these things need each other. And
Mhm.
like in my own life, things may have not always been great, but there were great things happening simultaneously. And at some point, I decided to let go of or use the bad and the good to create a better future for myself and hopefully for others now. And that's what part of this film is about. And it's called Living with Walls. I basically, yeah, it's my film. And It's only a 2 minute film, so please go and watch it and support it and share it. Um, and yeah, and also the premise of the film was to take a piece of your home and camouflage yourself into it and use that in a form of dance. And so I took my living room walls
Hmm.
and black and white tarp, and we did the makeup and the hair and everything, and we created this world within my home, which was really cool. It's very experimental. I used people Merce Cunningham techniques. Um, please, if you don't know who that is, please look him up. He was a very experimental modern dance. He had his own technique, and so yeah, and he's somebody that I learned about very young. And yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the short film. That's what it's about.
Absolutely, and I appreciate it because it shows the creativity is just not in the movement, but it's also in the mind, and being able to put your thoughts and the creative fluid and the juices into film. Because I myself do film, and I appreciate anyone that can put their creative influence into a production like that, no matter the budget, no matter
Right.
the circumstance.
Absolutely. And I'm
It's
the king. Again, a lot of things that I created when I was younger, people, especially in LA, oh, I don't have the money, I don't have this. Anybody out there, yes, money does help, but things you want to create, when you know what you want to create, and if it's part of your destiny, if it's in your gut, you can do it. And
yeah,
eventually, the more you do, the more things will open up and new opportunities will proceed to come into your life. But only you can put yourself there. And I want people to at least leave this discussion with that. Anything you can see in your mind, you can do. And don't be afraid of the work. Like if you should be afraid, if you're not failing, then you should be scared. Because at least when you're failing, you know that you are trying. But until then, you're not even in the race.
yeah. And I definitely believe that the discussion we had, it brought us down memory lane. It showed us how much more we were actually connected than we thought.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How much we thought alike. Um, Appreciating people like Nelson, people like Marco that also helped you, but
Absolutely.
also helped me and the other men who are straight and understanding the language, understanding the LGBTQ plus community, because it was integral that we were all young between maybe 14 to 17, and
Yeah.
we were being taught this while people who are older than us are
We're
still trying to
are still
understand.
trying to understand what that means.
So, I mean, that right there was a blessing in disguise, because I just had a interview previously with Jahaira Fajardo and Angelica, and I learned so much from that interview, especially on the language, because
Yes.
language evolves over time. So it
Right.
is important to treat everyone with the same respect when it comes to gender roles. It is it's very. I think it's everyone's right should be called whatever they choose to be called,
And
and they should identify.
yes, and people have the right to have their own human experience. We are not a bunch of boxes to be filled in, whether it's black, white, female, male. We have people have to realize, like, you've been taught to put yourself in the box, but it's your decision if you stay in that box. You know what I mean? You Once you see it, you have to understand that, like, the same way any person doesn't want to be labeled by any one thing in their lives, that's how queer people feel, and other people feel. They don't want one thing to define who they are. You are all
Yes,
the things, and you are anything, and you are everything.
yes.
And no one has the right to tell you any different.
Yeah, and it's those words coming from your lips that really will inspire this generation and also the future generation, because there are young boys, young adolescent boys who are in dance companies and trying
Yeah.
to figure out their place in society. Because again, we're only getting older, so learning from other people's experience is awesome, and it's very you have to engage in that, you have to respect it
Yes.
and
Yes.
understand. And for me, talking with you today was an experience, because there's so much that we haven't told each other. There's so many stories we haven't really brought back, and
Right, right. I mean, it's almost too much to even
yeah,
say.
it's and for me, it was a comment that Chris had wrote about an hour or two ago, and you actually said it was the yin and yang. We were in a group together, and we were yin and yang. But again, you needed the yin and yang.
You needed, you really needed both to to make what we made or what was being made. Like that's just how life is.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing seeing the work that you're creating, and of course during COVID, everybody's stuck at home, and I appreciate everyone that really again is taking this virus serious, because there are people in our dance community that are no longer here,
Yeah, yeah,
and for me, it's people like you that are continuing to be an inspiration for young males from the Bronx, young black queer males who again are just trying to find themselves, no matter if it deals with
absolutely,
just the orientation of sexuality or identity, but just trying to find themselves overall.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I definitely appreciate having you on this platform. Um, and it really was one of the greatest discussions that I've had thus far. And I know I will have so many more, but this is one of them that I will take with me, and hope this will inspire so many others later down the road.
I hope so, and I honestly thank you, man. Thank you for allowing me, giving me this platform to speak my truth, and hopefully I do. That's the one thing I can hope for, is that anybody out there, like, there is always hope. One, and anything is possible. You know.
Absolutely. And then, Timothy, with us, really just talking about our experiences, talking about a person in our life that affected us differently, but it still affected us in a harmful way. And we both persevered from that. It really
Absolutely.
is a true testament. And to see the man or the person that you become, a loving husband, a creator, a voice for your community, no matter if you're in LA or New York, I think is really something that again is should be preached about, told about. And again, I tell all of my guests, this is the first interview, but it surely won't be the last.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And at least when things get better, and I hope in California, like I've told people, I would love to come in California, reminisce with my friends, and really have more discussions.
That would be sick.
Absolutely, because again, having this discussion is opening the conversation for others to have with other people.
Yes. Yes.
So I mean, for us, we're helping other people. We're helping other people come to terms with what things that's probably happened to them. And that right there, we're doing a justice for our community. It's more
Yes.
than just dancing. And stuff
Yes.
that
Absolutely.
David instilled in us. And I know we're gonna keep this going. Again, I appreciate having you
Thank
here.
you, man. Thank you.
And again, this is just the first, and it won't be the last. I want to thank the audience.
Thank you,
Uh,
guys.
yes, all of the comments, questions, and again, if you do want to check out Living with Walls, I will be posting the link after we finish, and then as well, if you have any questions, definitely ask Timothy. You can message
Yes,
him.
please, please.
And before we go, can you just give us your Facebook and your Instagram for contact information?
Yeah, so my Facebook is Timothy Lanier-Circelli, which I believe is written on the bottom.
Yes.
And all other ventures are Timothy X Lewis. Timothy, Timothy X, and Lewis, Lewis. And please
Absolutely.
message me, watch the film. Love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. And Timothy, thank you so much.
Thank you,
And
bro.
until we meet again, have
I'll
a
see you
blessed.
so soon.
Absolutely, everyone. Thank you and be safe.
Bye, y'all.
Peace.